Chapter 4, Lesson 31 is on finding zeros of a polynomial. So, when we go to find zeros of a polynomial, so you'll get a polynomial, and what you're trying to find are the x-intercepts, essentially, is what you're doing, which would be considered the zeros. The solutions, if you want to look at it like that. So, we're going to do a little bit of cheating, so to say. We're going to take the functions, we're going to put them into Desmos to help us find one or more answers. But I'm doing that so you don't have to guess the answers, and there's some shortcuts to guessing answers, but this is by far the quickest way. So I'm going to let you find the answers, but then you're essentially showing how those answers work. So if you just write down the answers, you're not going to get credit for it. Yet you do have to do the steps for it. So you're going to take the function, put it into Desmos. You're going to pick one of the zeros. It doesn't matter which one. You're going to want to pick one that's the easiest to deal with. So, if something ends up being a decimal of some sort, you don't want to pick that. If you have 1 and 3.5, you want to use the 1. It's just easier to use. We're going to then do long division. We're going to divide that into the polynomial, whatever zero we happen to pick. When you do the long division, you'll end up with a remainder of 0. If you don't end up with a remainder of 0, that means you did it wrong. You did the division wrong, or I guess you could have picked something wrong as well. And then I'm going to take that answer, and I'm either going to factor it or I'm going to repeat the process depending on what my original equation started off with. So I'll show you what I'm talking about with those steps with a couple of examples that we're going to use. All right, so first one we're going to do x to the third plus x squared minus 21x minus 45. F of x is equal to. So we'll take that, plug that into Desmos. So when I plug that in, you'll see it crosses the x-axis at two spots, at -3 and at +5. So I'm going to choose one of those two. It doesn't matter which one. And you do x minus the number. So if I'm picking the -3, I would use x plus 3. And if I pick the 5, then I would do x minus 5. All right, I'm going to take that, and whichever one you pick, and you're going to divide it into this polynomial. And then when you do the division, again, you should end up with a remainder of 0 at the end. So I chose the x plus 3. Okay. So I'm not going to go through long division here. I did that in an earlier lesson. So if you need to know how these steps came about, then either go back through that or ask me. So I take the x plus 3, divide it into here, work my way all the way through, get a remainder of 0, which you're supposed to, and you'll have this right here. So what I've essentially done is I've factored. I now have two factors. I have the x plus 3 that I divided in, and the solution here at the top, x squared minus 2x minus 15. So I'm going to finish the problem off by writing those two things, right? Equals 0. Then, because this is quadratic, I can take this and factor this. It's possible it wouldn't be factorable, but from looking at the Desmos, I know that it's going to be factorable because I can figure out what the answers are. In any case, this will factor to, don't forget about the x plus 3, bring that down, and this will factor to x minus 5 times x plus 3. So if I set each one of those parentheses equal to 0, I get -3 from the original, and then 5 and -3 again from the factored one. So notice that you do have repeating answers. And don't forget repeating answers, bounce versus cross, because it bounced at this spot right here, I should get an even number of answers from that, which I did. I got 2 of them. And this one, because it crosses, I should have an odd number of answers from that, which I did. I got 1 of them. So your solutions for this, the zeros, would be at -3 and +5. You don't need to write the -3 twice. Question may ask you multiplicity. If it says multiplicity, then you would say -3 with a multiplicity of 2 and 5. You could write multiplicity of 1, but you don't have to. This particular question literally just says find the zeros. So the zeros would be -3 and 5. I wouldn't mark it wrong if you put the multiplicity, but you're not required to for this. Okay, so again, put the stuff into Desmos, find one of the zeros, divide that in, take what's left over. It was quadratic in that fact. We had the x squared as the answer. And factor that or use the quadratic formula if you have to, or however you need to solve that to get the remaining zeros. All right, let's do another example. This time let's do an x to the fourth one. So you'd have this function, plug that function into Desmos. So I would have these 4 zeros right here. So now I do have some decimal ones. So I'm not going to pick the decimal ones. I'm going to pick either the -2 or the 1. Actually, I'm going to end up picking them both eventually, and I'll show you why in a second. So there are 4 zeros here. I do have x to the fourth. All of them will have a multiplicity of 1 because it's supposed to have 4, and I have 4, and it crosses through at each spot, so they're all going to be odd. So I chose the -2. So I did x plus 2. Remember, again, it's the opposite of that because you'd have x is equal to -2, so x plus 2 is what you would divide in. So you're going to take that, do the long division with it. So that's what I did. Remainder of 0. This will be your polynomial. So now, this was x to the third. So what I did in the previous problem is I had x plus 2, or whatever it was in that one, times this. Well, it's x to the third. I don't know how to factor x to the third. So I'm going to repeat the process. Now instead, I'm going to pick the other 0, or one of the other zeros. So I'm going to pick the 1 in this case. And I'm now going to divide that into the answer that I had, which I'm going to do here on the next page. So I now take the x minus 1, divide that into the answer from the previous one. Again, when you do the long division on that, you should get 0. So now I have this x minus 1, the original x plus 2, and the 6x squared minus x minus 12. So now I'm going to take that, factor that, which would factor to 2x minus 3 and 3x plus 4. So my two solutions from that are 3/2, -4 thirds, and then the two previous that I used for the division, the 1 and the -2. Okay, again, those are the 4 zeros from the graph. So, in conclusion here, you're using Desmos to help you come up with the zeros so that you don't have to guess what the zeros are, but you're going to show the work with why those zeros end up working. Okay, so, and this would be the process for doing that. All right, so that's lesson 31. So you should be able to use Desmos to find the zeros. Then pick one of those zeros and use long division, and you're going to keep doing long division with the zeros until you get a quadratic. After you get the quadratic, you'll take that and factor that to find the remaining rational zeros. All right, so that's lesson 31 in chapter 4. Let me know if you have any questions.